Smat.
Got it. And we are live.
All right, sweet. And I need my note back. What happened to it? There we go. Every time, yeah.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Process Live. I'm your host, Kristen, and we've got perhaps a long overdue conversation today with Rob Smat, author of Power to the Players. Although, to be honest, anytime is a good time to talk GameStop. Welcome to the show, Rob. How you doing?
Happy to be here, doing super good. Just got my home office redone and now have all my fun posters behind my head.
That's great. Isn't that a relief when you can finally get things hung up and you're like, okay, that took me way too long, but here we go, you know?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess, typically when I do these types of things, I spend some time researching whatever topics we're going to talk about. We talk a lot about Film 3 and Web 3, also talk a lot about filmmaking and, building art on the blockchain and stuff like that. This conversation, I want to say I didn't prepare a ton for because we both are kind of cut from the same cloth as far as, GameStop goes, filmmaking goes, writing goes. So I don't know, more than anything, I'm excited to have, I have some basic questions for you, but I wanted to have, also kind of a fun, open-ended conversation. GameStop, it's like just an ongoing topic for both of us, right? And for
That's
so
right.
many more people. But before we dive into that, I do want to hear a little bit about your background. I know you're a writer, you're a filmmaker, you're in, the GameStop community. To kick us off, why don't you just talk to me a little bit about your background and then how you found your way into GameStop?
I didn't know that film school was a thing until I was, probably 16 or 17 and looking at, going to college somewhere. And, I always grown up, making movies in my backyard and directing friends. And, my senior year of high school, I made a feature length film on, a budget of like $100 that we shot, 5 or 6 days after school. And it was really cool. And it's a bug that I've always had. And, whenever I learned about film school and I learned about, the indie filmmaking world, it really got me excited. I did the USC film track, so I kind of got to see, what is, essentially considered a very cream of the crop sort of approach to filmmaking. But I was disappointed in the fact that so many people in the film school arena either were related to somebody important, and so they kind of already had their track set up. They already kind of knew they were going to be an executive somewhere, or or people that really thought they deserved to be there. They're obviously everybody's ego's inflated in any university program, but definitely a lot of inflated egos. And while there's no issue with ego, it's always good to have some of it. It led to a lot of laziness, I thought. And I think that was, kind of what shocked me was, I thought I was going to show up in LA and meet a bunch of people that were all very driven, and they were in the beginning. And I think, it's something that filmmakers like us that, are not in our early, late teens understand is a huge part of it is, are you going to continue to wake up every morning and want to write, want to direct, want to edit, want to be a part of, being an artist? And I think I really hit that point my junior, senior year. And I really saw a lot of the wheat being separated from the chaff, a lot of the either lazier people or less motivated people, or people that went into film school knowing they didn't know what they wanted to do and had gone 2 years and still hadn't really figured it out or committed to anything. They were really kind of starting to peel away, or they were kind of going to they were going into, their backup plans. And I was really gung ho at a time when the internet and YouTube and, event after that TikTok, was really wrecking the sort of that, streamline in pipeline into the agencies and into, being a working creative. And so it was almost in those 4 years I was at SC, probably, the mid teens, where it went from a time of write a good sample, go and produce a good sample, go and make something impressive that's a few minutes long, and take that to an agency and get an agent, and then start working around town. And and I think that really started to dry up around that time or just before that time, because you can go to the internet feed, because the rosters didn't have to be filled by people in LA. And so out of school, I was really motivated to go do something big. But at the same time, I wanted to do something that, even if it didn't land me an agent, would still have success. I wanted to do something that had success outside of, sort of that standard film festival system. I wanted something that, could have commercial success, could create a business model, could, be a proof of concept for other work. And so that was the last whistle, which, if you're watching, you can see I've got the alt poster behind me right there. And that was, a football movie, and produced that again, sort of like in my backyard, and on favors. And instead of $100 budget, it was $100,000 budget. But that what we were able to do with that was amazing. And the movie made it onto Netflix for a little while. And, that was kind of my beginning. And then after that, COVID really peeled off and forced me to diversify what I was writing and directing.
Yeah, as it did for all of us, I think.
Yes.
That was a real testament, I think, for not just filmmakers, but kind of for all walks of life. Like, okay, how about this curveball? What are you going to do now to, not only survive, mentally, but, keep your career going, especially if you're in a creative field. How do you not get stifled during this, difficult time where everything's shut down?
And again, you talk about creative stifling, and while there was a lot of that with not being able to get on set with people, I would get really sort of annoyed with writers talking about having writer's block during lockdowns, because it's like, you've got the most time to write ever. No one's calling you. Like, why are you why are you going out of your way to be lazy and waste your own time? And I think that's always been the mentality I've had is, just keep your nose to the grindstone, and party hard when you get the chance to. But if you don't have if you haven't reached the top of the mountain, keep climbing.
Yeah, totally. I share that sentiment with you. I haven't experienced writer's block, and I don't know if it's because I've just, I don't know. I try to keep as many irons in the fire, and I try to keep my eyes and my ears open all the time, like just the world around me. I mean, you just go people watching, go travel, there's story literally everywhere. There's something to jump off of, like story wise everywhere. There's characters that are living around us, and we even live with them, so yeah. It's like, there's just, to me, I share that with you, that I don't necessarily believe in writer's block. I believe in, just constantly getting yourself out of your own comfort zone, because I think that's maybe a direct pathway to writer's block, is when you think you got it made and the story is, it's just like, it's always a grind, is really what it comes down to. And it's always about, I think on Twitter the other day, I posted this Judd Apatow video where he's like, like, when you're done writing your thing, be on to the next thing. Don't hang on to that. And then, sure,
yes.
Put it places and stuff, but like constantly, like, what's the next thing? And I see you're doing that with your writing too. I mean, you publish Power to the Players, boom, you've got your next one coming out, right. Or it's either just come out, right, or it's about to come out. So
on Tuesday, that's the one right here. The Wedding March will be my second published book, and that will be coming out on Tuesday. It unfortunately has nothing to do with GameStop, but it was pretty funny. I posted on Reddit earlier this week that hit the top of Super Stonk, and somebody had commented the TLDR for Power to the Players, which is right here, but there's some glare blocking it. The TLDR for their version, their TLDR for Power to the Players ends up being the final line of the prologue for the Wedding March. So I think there must be a common theme somewhere in my writing, even if I don't think they're all the same.
Okay, yeah. And the other thing too that I'll say is, I love that. I love that the wedding march actually has nothing to do with power to the players. That's what makes you a dynamic writer, you know, when you've got,
You
and I
have to
think that,
be. That's right.
yeah. And so if I'm correct in saying this, the wedding march is a personal story, right? And I guess power to, you know, and this is your book too, like power to the
Yeah,
players.
thank you. I was
My
digging
dog's
up my
modeling it.
copy. Yeah,
So,
amazing.
but I do want to say, you know, it's just like, you know, maybe even power to the players is a little bit of a personal story too. I think kind of we all have that in us as far as this, you know, GameStop ongoing saga, which has driven so many of us into this wild and crazy community. So if you don't mind, like just kind of expanding upon like how did you arrive here? How, like, talk to me about that story a little bit.
And I think that's such a fun thing, is to have, you know, my first two books sort of be semi autobiographical, but not to the point that I ever become the focus of the books. Because as soon, you know, it's either an autobiography or it's not, and it's never my intention to have it be an autobiography, because at that point it's all about me and not about the interesting people that really are the purpose of the book. But at the same time, it's cool to be a part of these stories, because you're really blending the lines of genre. You're blending the lines of fiction and nonfiction. That's something I strove even more determinedly to do with Wedding March, is to make the book read like a novel, and to essentially be the, you know, narrativized, fictionalized version of true facts. But every quote you see in the book, unless I had to change, or I had to change name, like that's all, you know, legit to what happened. And Wedding March, kind of the style of writing Wedding March, was very similar to the Antisocial Network, which was Ben Mesrick's book about GameStop, which was the basis for Dumb Money. So sorry, a lot of film and book titles there.
Yeah.
I gotta like reach through my library and get it, each one. But it is a really cool space that we live in now, where you can't just define, you know, a book or a story as it's a novel, it's sci-fi, it's comedy, it's, you know, it's really cool that we've crystallized those genres so much that, you know, game. If somebody asked me Power to the Players, what, you know, genre is that? I don't know. Markets, political science, social science, comedy. You know, it's nonfiction,
Education.
education.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot under it, and you don't want to try to quantify it, because as soon as you say all those 6 words in a row, it just confuses people and they hang up the phone. So
Yeah.
uh, so,
Yeah.
but getting into Power to the Players was a really cool. It came at a time. Obviously, it was January 2021. I had written a couple of scripts, like I was talking about, during 2020, knowing this is a great time to write. I've got, you know, a fantastic amount of time to kind of try to, you know, pump away these scripts that, you know, Last Whistle had ended its release cycle. It left Netflix in late 2020 or early 2021, I think. So I could kind of see that that journey was coming to an end, and I was able to wrap up a bunch of loose ends with Last Whistle, and sort of look at, you know, the just what I needed to do next, essentially. And so that's whenever the GameStop thing happened. And for years, you know, they'd been saying, you know, like college professors and podcasters and all those sorts, just if you can't sell a script, write a book. You know, if you can't sell a script, write a book. And what I liked about writing a book was what I liked about making The Last Whistle, which is you're making something that you can go and sell. And there's nothing wrong with short films, and there's nothing wrong with um, I don't know, like I'm trying to think about other things that you can't go and sell, but you think about like a short film. A short film, if you're doing it's like a proof of concept, or maybe you want to get
Hmm.
into Sundance, you know, okay, there's a 1% of the 1% where a short film really does turn into commercial success. But for the other
Right.
99.9%, you can't take a short film and essentially go sell it. Now that's, you know, obviously before the era of NFTs, and I think that that's an important caveat, which is maybe there is a new, you know, short film, you know, boom on the horizon. But as of, you know, 2021, 2020, that wasn't the case. And so that was where I was like, well, I've been I've written as many scripts as I think I can write in 2020. I've got some more that I'm sure I could write in 2021, but let's go and do a book. And it was during the Citron phase of the GameStop story where I was like, oh, this is a cool story. Like I immediately know what the readership is for this. And so I essentially started writing the Antisocial Network a week before Ben Mesrick did, and before he got a 6-7 figure deal for the rights to his book. And it was so funny because I was texting a producer I had worked for saying, hey, I'm covering this. Like I'm a couple weeks early to this. I've got, and of course I'd done everything except like lock down life rights, which probably would have been the smarter move. Not that DFE was replying to anybody at that point.
Right.
And so basically, that's kind of when I realized, well, I'm going to get beat to the punch on this. So I need to sort of diversify again. I need to go I need to leave the red ocean and go to a blue ocean where there's not blood in the water, essentially. And so that's what I did. And my goal at that point became, I'm going to write a book, and I don't care how long it takes me. I don't care how long it takes me to find a publisher now that the market is so inundated with GameStop content. But I'm going to write a book that gets the story right, and that the people that were involved in it will actually enjoy. And that was kind of gambling on the fact that the other authors were going to screw it up. And I think in a lot of ways they did, aside from Ben Mesrick, who I think did an okay job with the book, and the movie producers did a much better job even than he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. So first of all, I didn't read Ben's book, so I have no idea. I have nothing to like hold that to. I did think the movie was I don't know, a little hokey, here and there. I thought the opening was great. I loved that
Opening was
opening
incredible.
scene. The
Yes.
the choice the choice of music was just perfect. I know a lot of people are unhappy with how deep fucking values brother was portrayed. I have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to hold that against. So I don't know his brother, and I haven't seen him aside from like pictures, but um I I do think that Paul Dano, I don't know if he really watched any of his videos that much, because I felt like he was playing a little bit too, I don't I still haven't been able to put my finger on like how to describe this, but I feel like Paul Dano was playing to like this really quirky side of DFE, and to me, DFE was very like, he was very professional. Sure, he was using like an 8-ball, and he was like using some of those things to like break up, the content, the stuff that he was delivering. So he was having fun with it. But I think all that aside, I think he was very serious and very much like wanting to talk about what he was interested in, and there was a very real side to him that I don't think that they got across that well. Maybe that's just not as interesting though, right? So you have to take that into consideration when you're putting together a movie like this. It's like, okay, what are the story drivers? How are we going to move this forward and keep it from, um, I don't know, like being
It
stale or at any
and
point.
it is nice to talk about the critiques of the movie, because I think when you start to discuss them and you think about the issues with the things that you found most problematic with Dumb Money, it's like, well, you know what, this could have been worse. Like
Yeah, yeah.
if this is what we're critiquing coming away from it, it could have been worse. Like they could have really taken a hatchet, and they would have suffered financially, because I don't think that people would have supported the movie as much if they portrayed everybody like Spencer Jacobs' book did. That book was called "The Revolution That Wasn't," and his book, I mean, it is just banal and snooty and rude. And I listened to the whole thing on audiobook, because I wanted to know what the competition looked like with these GameStop
Right.
books. And in the end, there will be three. It'll be Jacob's book, it'll be Ben Mesrick, and it'll be me, as far as I know. I think there's one more author out there that had a deal on the table, and I think he kind of let it fall apart. I don't know what the latest with him is.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm glad that I guess from my perspective, you're writing from the POV of being in the community, right? And I think if you're in the community, then you really know what's going on, because um, it's not just people talking about what's happening and those types of things. We're talking like in the Reddit space, there is significant DD that has been dropped over the last handful of years. It feels like forever ago, but this information has been critical because anybody that drops DD in that space, right? Super stonk, people are there to poke holes in it, right? They want to prove it wrong. Like if you're bringing like some big, news or whatever, or something that you've discovered, people are there to shoot it down.
It's surprising how many very smart people there are. People that are very smart at very certain things, not necessarily brilliant economists or brilliant, statisticians or brilliant this or brilliant that, but everybody in the community has one really great skill, and they rely on the rest of the community of people with the complementary skills to say, okay, I think you're onto something here, or sorry, better luck next time.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's sort of like that's really powerful. That's incredibly powerful to a movement like this. So that's something that's sort of like, I think that you have an edge on. It doesn't appear like Ben Mesrich like was in that space for too long. Maybe he hung out in Wall Street Bats,
He got into it a lot more so when the movie got ready to come out, because the movie debuted during the actors and the writers strike. And so he was the only non-SAG, non-WGA part of the movie that I think was actually able to do press for it. And
Okay.
so I heard from some people on Super Stonk that they felt like he did a Twitter space where I think he said, "Oh, maybe there is a sequel here. I'll look into DRS and start following that." So it's like he is definitely not. He's a very famous writer with a lot of great projects, and I'm sure he's already moved on to the next one after the next one since then. So the fact that he's kept up with it like he has and did the press for the Dumb Money movie, I think is commendable, and I get the sense that he definitely started to realize that that there was something he was missing out on by just interviewing the people that appeared in the book and not going into the content itself. But that was the other reason I wanted to put it into book form, is the chronological nature of the content is so hard to grasp because you can go back and find specific posts, but if you can't see what hot looked like at hour to hour during an event like this, you're going to have no clue what the actual drivers were and what was actually impelling this entire movement. And that was what I actually discussed with some Norwegian Business Institute academics this week. They're going to do a study on that very thing, which is what made Reddit unique, and what primary sources do we have besides the most upvoted post from that time.
Yeah,
And
that's cool.
why that's what I try to instill in Power to the Players, is that like hour by hour approach, because you don't get that even if you have a Wayback Machine. Even if you're searching post by post, you just can't get it if you weren't there.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, the other thing that I mean, obviously let's see. The other thing that's very interesting, besides what happened and DFV and also Ryan Cohen coming in and just kind of this ongoing like unfolding of what's going on, is just the community itself had its own wild cast of characters. I mean, we're talking like Rick of Spades, like, just really the memes, the people that were just posting stuff, those types of things I see as being like the moments that we're taking this whole thing, which is like incredibly serious, right? And incredibly intense, and people are putting their money in and losing money and making money and losing money again, and just on this roller coaster. But they're also making it, they're taking the edge off, by
Sure.
Rick of Spades, daring,
it can definitely be like gallows humor.
yeah,
If
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
But at the same time, you only lose money if you sell, right?
right. You're right. And the thing is that like about those characters is like I would love to see a film where those people are taken into account. I know that Dumb Money did a good job at like there was a couple of characters that came through.
Yeah.
But man, there's so much more and God knows how that thing would get written, because that's insane in and of itself. Um,
It would
you
be
know.
tough, but there's
Yeah.
definitely a way to do it. And when DRS blows up the whole system, they're going to have to do a story on it. They won't have any choice.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, that's wild. So then you got in around like at the turn of what was it, 2021 or not got in but it came to your attention, the whole
Uh,
GameStop thing that was going on.
I think I bought my first share right after the Citron squeeze was
Okay.
successful when it went from $40 to $60. Obviously pre kind of where it still stands now. That was probably where I bought my first share, and
Okay.
stuck with
And
it ever
then
since. Bought a share here, a share there. But basically knew from the outset that this was going to be a story that I wanted to tell. I hoped other people would want to read it, but I think what I like most is this is a story that the members of the community are enjoying reading because it's emblematic of what actually happened and not just like, oh, we're going to tell, it's kind of that Dumb Money approach where it's like, well, we're going to tell the story in a way that the average viewer is going to enjoy, and everybody. And I think that there's sort of that's kind of the temptation you get into, especially from like a cinematic or producing approach, is it's very much that difference between American Crime Story, OJ Simpson, and the ESPN like 3 hour documentary on OJ. And I
mhm.
watched both when they came out. And the like 3 or 4 hour ESPN documentary, I was like glued to the screen. It was appointment watching every night, like fine glass of wine, just enjoying like every bit of that. And then and with no disrespect to Scott Alexander and Larry Karashevsky, who wrote the American Crime Story version. But I got 30 minutes into it, and the only thing I could think was like that this is all kind of like fake, like it doesn't interest me because it just isn't like real. And
Mhm.
and so I think that's like a very I don't think I'm Gen Z, but I know that anyone born a couple years after me is Gen Z, and I think that's a Gen Z thing is like I don't know how well like the Twister sequel will do this summer because it's not based on a true story, right? And there was a time when you went to the movies and you watched movies to see disaster on screen, but nowadays there's so much disaster on our phones every day that
Yeah.
especially these younger generations, I don't know that disaster on screen means anything to them if it's not based on a true story. So
Yeah,
anyway,
for
that's
real.
kind of the other side of the power of the players thing, and of course the eventual movie adaptation is it will. I really hope it'll be more of that documentary approach where it's what is actually happening in the moment, and of course you can have funny voiceovers and that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
not the Dumb Money treatment where that's kind
Yeah.
of it's paid for a plane ride.
Right on. Yeah. I wonder at any point when you were writing this, were you thinking, how am I going how am I going to end this? How
Oh
where do
yeah,
I put the period? Because then it's like, I mean, you're literally chasing right after this story because there's constantly I'm thinking of that GIF where it's like a cartoon. I'm trying to think of the cartoon character, but it's like a train that's moving really fast and he's on the train, he's laying tracks down as fast as, and the train is
yep.
mowing over the track. It's like it's that is kind of how I feel writing a piece like this would be. It's like the story is still being told. So how the hell do you know where to put a period and then be done?
I think that's a trap that a lot of filmmakers get into. I think that's a nice, little bridge between our two talking points. Is I went through all of college, and whether it was screenplays or short films or documentaries or even the occasional feature film or two, these projects that my colleagues, God bless them, made were never finished. And
Right.
there was always something else they could fix. There was always, you had that like asymptote where it keeps coming down to like perfection, but you can never get there. You can only keep getting halfway closer. And there's a point where you have far exceeded what any viewer is going to come away with, or worse, there is some glaring aspect of your approach that will be so much worse than whatever it is you're trying to fix. You're bailing water out of the Titanic at a certain point. And so I definitely took that approach with this book, which is it will need to be finished at some point. I don't know that it will tell the whole story. If and when if the rocket had launched, if MOAS had happened by the end of when I had to turn in the manuscript, this time last year, then I don't know what I would have done. I don't know if I had, it's I was glad. Basically, what I told myself is, write the story, try to find that third act, and even if you don't, make sure it's open-ended enough that we can still revisit it when it comes to its imminent conclusion, whether that's months, years, or decades from now, because it will end somewhere, and it can't. There's no way that, it's going to end somewhere, and I'm excited to tell that story when it comes around to it.
Cool. God, I hope it's not decades. It's a long road for real.
But the nice thing is, if it is, I don't have any less faith in the people that are holding their shares and staying zen. Like the biggest hurdle in all of this was probably like whenever the share count stopped getting published in the quarterly reports. The fact that people are sticking around after that and continuing to directly register shares, I think, speaks highly to the continued movement, and just kind of knowing that there's something going on here, and we don't know what it is, but I'm excited to find out.
Right. And not to mention, I mean, we haven't even gotten into some other things yet. Like, this isn't just like, people saw an opportunity, that, it was communicated to us by DFV. It was a, cool thing to get into, whatever. That's not where the story ends. We're talking like, Ryan Cohen comes in, very credible individual, incredible plays all throughout. He first comes in as the chairman, right? And you can even like fill in some of these gaps for me. Like he cleans out the board, right? All the people that are in there are probably doing shit that they're not supposed to be doing. As the
doing things that he considered to be lazy and wasteful.
Right. And then at some point he becomes CEO, and then, cleans up the debt for the company. And then also as he cleans up the debt first, then he comes in and he's CEO, isn't taking his salary. I mean, these are all things that are incredible moves that you would want a company that you're investing in to be making. So it's like, it's not just like, oh, GameStop is pretty, it's pretty cool and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is like a really incredible company that's positioning themselves for success. So to your point about whether this is, months, years, or decades out, it is inevitable.
Yeah. And again, he's not perfect. Like I still, definitely I tried to put some of the Bed Bath stuff into the book, but I truly, in the end, I took a lot of that chapter out because I didn't really understand what that ended up being all about. And I think what's interesting about Papa Cohen is I think his original play, and this is just me totally speculating, I didn't get a chance to interview him for the book, nor did I really want to. I think I wanted the book to be more about the community and not about him, because he'll get his due when the time comes, and not like the Mean King episode on CNBC, which wasn't great.
Right.
I think his initial plan was to go from Chewy, sell it to PetSmart, reinvest those proceeds into GameStop shares, perform that hostile takeover, do the poison pill or whatever the term for what he did was. And then I almost get the sense that he was going to kind of start building a network of companies that he could bring under sort of the RC umbrella. And I don't know that his initial play was attacking short sellers or trying to attack a company that he thought was going to be seller boxed. Whether or not that is the case at GameStop, we don't know. But I think he was going to sort of start planting seeds in a row and growing them all. And then I think whenever he became, again, this is all projection, I have no clue, it's all theory. But then I think you see him become CEO, and there's the sense that he's realized, you know what, if I've got to be all in on this, and that's exciting to see.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's at the very least really interesting to watch, and I agree with your sentiments on the Bed Bath and Beyond thing. I do think that he was trying to um do something else that was cool, and it wasn't able to happen because of I think the nature of a lot of these companies that are just sort of like you have a bunch of lazy people on a board, and they're taking a cut, and just sort
Yeah,
of
sometimes it's laziness, sometimes it's ineptitude, sometimes it's an old guard. I mean, there are 1,000
Mhm.
reasons why a corporation fails, and it's exciting to know that out in the world there's at least one corporation in GameStop that's trying a different approach.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of cool. Um uh the other thing that I wanted to chat with you about too is like, so in writing a book like this, um I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the aim is to not just write a book for the community of people that, want to pick it up and actually read something that where they feel like, yes, this is done right. But you also want to appeal to people who don't know anything about this, or maybe they know very little and they want to get that like educational component. That said, this information is incredibly it can be really dry and difficult to kind of make
Yep.
your way
Yep.
through. So, um, I'm sure you've had these experiences. I've heard many other people have these experiences. I myself have had these experiences. Maybe it's like Thanksgiving Day, you're sitting around the table and you're trying to talk to your family about GameStop, right? And everybody
Yeah.
glosses over, like 30
Oh,
seconds
I
into
mean,
the
it's still
conversation.
so amazing that the people, anytime I talk to anybody, especially people that even know that that I wrote the book about, great aunts, great uncles, kind of on that side of things, where, they'll ask like, oh yeah, it's so crazy, that whole GameStop thing was crazy and what, now it's like bankrupt again, right? And it's like, no, it's amazing how uninformed the public was, especially prior to dumb money. And since dumb money, now they're kind of like, oh, like, so it's not bankrupt, I guess. It's that whole what folks call the mainstream media. If there's a narrative that is in the mainstream, it tends to be very sticky, and you see that. That's not necessarily a conspiratorial thing. You see that with any number of people like that. I think one of the most prevalent instances I can think of is that all this stuff that's coming out about that Duke lacrosse team. How for years we all thought they were a bunch of rapists, and now it's coming out that they weren't, that the story was wrong, or there was something fraudulent about it. But it doesn't matter what truth comes out at this point, because everyone will always think of that as what they initially granted it as. And I think that's the challenge that GameStop has in the public discourse is, not being the revolution that wasn't, when so many in the media cast it that way for
Right
either
on.
nefarious or laziness. It's and that was a Mark Cuban quote that shows up in Power of the Players is, a lot of times the media isn't nefarious, it's just uninformed. The people that are supposed to be doing the reporting either have too high of a workload, or they research in the wrong way. And I'm guilty of that too. There are parts of Power of the Players that I'm sure do not would not stand the test of a really rigorous peer review. uh, and I tried to, again, encounter that as much as I could going into the book, and share it with as many, Reddit, people that knew better than me in one place or another as I could, and luckily, didn't hit too many roadblocks. But I think that I don't even remember where this started, but basically, you run into those people who really just have no clue of what's happened since the Robinhood buy button day, and so much has happened. And I think that's, this book is sort of like that CVS receipt. Like I want it to be the longest, dang receipt that anybody has to read when, if anything ends up happening with the DRS movement, and I'm sure that it will. I want that. I want the receipts to be there.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And you did mention that this book that you are writing a script for it, right? Is that what you said? That whether it's documentary or
I'm writing a script for Wedding March. Wedding March has
okay.
got a screenplay with Power to the Players. Power to the Players started as it started as, I think my trouble going into it was I didn't know what the documentary looked like, and so I started writing the book knowing that I could draw from that into some sort of documentary treatment. And having not had a film and TV deal come along for it, I haven't been forced to write that treatment yet. But I think I would definitely know what that looks like and how I would approach it. It's with the documentary treatment isn't, as it's almost a little easier to write than a screenplay. A screenplay is 90 to 120 pages. A documentary treatment can be 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost a thing where there's really no reason to write until you know who the audience will be and what the format will be. Whereas screenplay is a screenplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, well that's interesting. I wasn't sure if you were gonna try and take it down that road. Um,
I definitely had some conversations around it, and with Dumb Money coming out, and then having Dumb Money only whatever it did domestically, 50 or $60 million, it's just not in the zeitgeist right now. And so it's
mhm.
just essentially my investment waiting for things to blow up again and have it re-enter the public discourse and then have people come knocking.
Yeah. Okay. Um, what's I guess what's happening now with GameStop? Like, what do you like? What's I guess if you've got your finger on the pulse, like, what are you anticipating, or what? Yeah, just talk to me a little bit about that.
We've got earnings coming up pretty soon. And I think this is the quarter that people are really hopeful will be the first to be profitable since that first profitable quarter this time a year and a half ago. So the hope is that with the cost cutting that GameStop did last year, that the next couple weeks we'll see, was it the 10K report or an 8? I forget the names of the financial report, but the hope is that we'll see we'll see GameStop in the black, for the second time since RC took over, and hopefully to stay, and as they continue to improve that balance sheet. So that would be a huge deal. That's what everybody on the subreddit is watching mostly. But at the same time, Supersonic has been extremely zen for the past, especially 6 months, but pretty much a year. As soon as those computer share tallies started to plateau, in a very statistically, a dubious way in the opinions of most, not fraudulent, but very statistically dubious. It's shocking to see a graph, increase and then just plateau like that. There's got to be, folks think there's got to be something going on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Well,
continuing to try to figure out.
do you mind if I
Oh yeah.
interrupt you for a second? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because that's super bizarre, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
one of those things that's just like, okay, what makes the numbers just suddenly, I mean, you can see them climbing and then suddenly it's just like, okay, what's going on with that?
It reminds me of the proxy voting, and that's part of the book, is kind of talking about how the proxy voting campaign back in the days of Rensol, for the apes that have been there for 84 years, that Rensol kind of leading this at a time when people were talking about computer share and deciding that initially computer share was FUD. First, they decided, let's try to do a get out the vote campaign, right? So that was the first time you see flares on the Supersong page. That was the first time that you see, a lot of these things pop up that, are still there. Like you still see like an 8 voted flare from that campaign, which is over 2 years in the past at this point. And that was sort of the initial idea was, let's get as many votes in as possible. Let's see how many. Let's see when everybody votes with their shares. Let's see what the share count comes out to. And the proxy voting amount came out with like it came out to be like 1 million or 2 million within whatever the number was the year before. And it's kind of like everybody like, okay, wait, did we only vote with like 1 million of our shares, and there's 100,000 of our like each of us owns between 1 and 10 shares, and there's 500,000 of us here. Like, how did that happen? And so that was kind of, I think it's a similar, because people were really mad after that too. And people were mad in the sense that it was like, this was supposed to be the smoking gun, where we showed there are 70 million votes, and there's only supposed to be 65 million shares. So obviously someone rehypothecated shares or naked shorted shares, ergo the squeeze is still on. And they didn't get that. And so that's when it kind of entered it entered the canon almost, that you could have a tally that gets adjusted for an end result and not for an actual result, right? You have a tally that you ends up getting, again, it's a theory. It's nobody knows for sure, but it's this idea that you could end up with a number that had to be pared down because it didn't match. It's almost like when you screwed up with like a chemistry project in high school science, right? And it's like, well, I didn't end up with 1 millimeter of copper at the end of this experiment, so maybe if I fudge the numbers a little bit, it's kind of amazing to see that happen, to seem like that's happening, and whether or not it is or not. So anyway, I think that was a prerequisite for what's happening now with the computer share numbers, where they've been going up on those quarterly reports, the first quarterly reports in the history of business that have ever talked about how many directly registered shares there are. And now that number is totally plateaued. And I think that's, again, it's more telling than anything, which is not only is there something screwy going on here, but it just, the plot continues to thicken. And it's amazing how the people, it's the good guys have to have their hands tied, and the bad guys can act with a little more freewheeling authority. And I think that's, if that's the way that it truly works, even though it kind of seems like that's the way it works, if that's the way it truly works, I think it's it's just years and years of regulators looking the other way and rules being changed. And unfortunately, if it all goes the way that the super stock as theory stands, it could be extremely disastrous for more people than just the people that may or may not be shorting GameStop.
Yeah. It kind of blows me away that as this story unfolds and continues, there's just nonstop like peeling back of the layers, or like the reveal. The curtain is constantly being opened and on like more and more fraudulent activity. It's just really mind blowing. And then you really turn towards the financial system, honestly, and just you start to look at all of it and you're like, what is this? Like you really
at
lose
a certain point it just feels kind of like a bunch of band-aids on top of band-aids, and it's just like anything else in government,
decades,
or it's like, and there are some areas where I think you think there's a ton of fraud, and maybe there's not as much as you think, but it's those areas that you're not thinking about where you do have issues. And that's on our representatives and elected officials to find out for us. And I've tried writing them. I've mailed copies of Power to the Players to Liz Warren and the people who I think of when it comes to making sure that Wall Street plays by the rules, and just to say, hey, here's what everybody thinks is happening. Can you put us in touch with someone? And it's like, I never get anything back, but I always get signed up for their email list when I do that. So I know it's getting there. It's not making an impact. But the other thing that's exciting about GameStop is they are going to be forced to, I think, make something of a change in the coming months or years, probably, because I think the next gen consoles will be the first without disk drives. And that was what gave GameStop the initial big quarter right before DFE doubled down in late 2020 was all of those next gen consoles came with disk drives. And the next ones I think will be the first to not have those. And so GameStop will have to decide, do we want to be a used game store? Do we want to continue to modify to something else? Do we want to go online? And that's where I'm excited about these trademark registrations for the player network. And kind of, hopefully it evolves into what people thought the GameStop NFT marketplace could be, which is sort of that digital gaming marketplace for items that you own, even though they're digital, you own them, and they can't just be, destroyed with the flip of a switch somewhere inside of a Hollywood studio or game studio.
Yeah, yeah, and that was that was incredibly disheartening. The closure of the GameStop NFT marketplace, because I mean, I know I had high hopes for it. I was really excited when it launched. We were really excited to be a part of it. We had some really great success, with it. That said,
congrats on your success on it, because as a creator on it, I was never really able to get through. I think I was way too late to the game. And sadly, I did not get to be the first feature film to release on the GameStop marketplace. That will be this one. I want to make a feature film NFT, so I'm open to any suggestions on where to go with that now that the marketplace is on.
Well, and for sure, to be honest, like if I could be honest about this, like I don't think it matters who's first. I think it matters if you're any good, because I think that anyone can rush whatever out and be first. And if it's like not any good, then like, where are you going to go after that? I think it's if you know story, and clearly you do, and you can, put together interesting, compelling, works of art, you're going to do well, and so the upside of, us, like literally, I have to thank Andrea Berry, who is the director of the business development side over at Theta Network. She came in, like swooped in, knew that the GameStop marketplace was closing, and was like, let's strategize. Let's bring you guys on as partners. And like, we'll make that announcement the same day. And it was just like, oh my God, it was such a breath of fresh air, and such a great way to exit gracefully, which I think is in all honesty, the GameStop NFT marketplace and many of the creators, they did not know how to act gracefully in that space. And I think that when you're very small team, I'm talking about GSMP, the NFT marketplace, when you're very small team, working the best you can with the amount of time constraints, trying to meet everybody's needs, it could get probably pretty frustrating when, people are just sort of, maybe emailing you, or just like their needs aren't being met. And so then they're going to go to social media, and then they're going to spin up a whole bunch of drama and tag Ryan Cohen and tag the marketplace. And, it's just like the community and people, like media and all that stuff, we don't need that side, like there's already enough going on to kind of give GameStop a pain point. So that was not something that I really appreciated, and especially having creators that really liked to speak for all creators. GameStop isn't communicating at all. It's just like, we never had any problems with any communication. Anytime we emailed them, always got an email back. Anytime we had a call with them, just everything was on time. And right up to the end. I mean, they were messaging us on a Saturday and sometimes on holidays. And so I tend to operate a little bit differently. I think that for some of those creators, it was their first time. At least they acted like it was their first time, and just kind of had a really unprofessional way that they were running things. And instead of being patient and wanting more than anything to support this team, right? Like, this is your team that's going to, we all need to work together to make this work. They weren't about that. So, so it was disappointing. I think that while it seemed like the SEC was really targeting the marketplace, and that evidently led to their closure. I'm pretty sure that that team was like, holy shit, I'm so glad, because this was hell, you know, just constantly having to combat people coming after you. It's just it's not a good look, to say the least. So
And my hope from a business perspective is, you know, companies will pilot projects like that because they're really hard to wind up, you know, technologically advanced arms. I worked at the VR initiative started by IMAX, you know, 6 or 7 years ago. And, you know, as much as I love IMAX, the VR initiative was a disaster. And I think it was a wash financially for them, is my guess. But
what part of
IMAX
it
is
was a
IMAX.
disaster? I'm curious, what part was a disaster in your mind?
Probably the actual like user experience. I think they did a great job with it. Was sort of like a movie. You know, if I compare it to like making a movie, they put a lot of money into everything except like the screenplay and the actors. You know, so it's like
Right.
it was a very polished environment. They'd done a great job licensing content. You know, they had an entire point of sale system, and you know, I'm sure just globs of money put towards, you know, art and design and marketing and real estate. And then once you step foot through the lobby and you were, you know, engaging with the VR system, it was just a bunch of I don't even remember at this point. I used to have to fix those things every day as one of their technicians. It was a bunch of like Oculus headsets kind of set up in like, you know, a cube. And it was kind of like, are people like supposed to, you know, it's kind of like you set up such a great infrastructure as this VR arcade just for people to put on something they can like get it by at home. You know, that was kind of the disconnect for me and what I didn't totally understand. And, you know, the pricing was a little steep if you wanted to play, you know, more than one experience. So that was where it was like, you know, again, I don't want to badmouth IMAX because I love IMAX. And that's why I enjoyed working there, and their team to do such great things. But when it came to that VR initiative, that's where it was like, but they did that because if VR was on a upswing trajectory like they thought it was in those late teen years, they would have the hardware in place. Whereas, you know, the worst thing that could happen is they lost a few $1 million trying to do the IMAX VR beta. You know, I think that the GameStop Marketplace was sort of the same thing, where it was like, okay, you know, it seems like we need to have one of these. We should be not the first, but we'll be in the first 5 or 10, groups to have such a marketplace. And if it doesn't work out, then, you know, we won't, you know, stick our necks out too far on it. And the fact that it never left beta, you know, the fact that it never left beta, and at the same time, the fact that the second that the regulators came knocking on it, they just decided to back off. You know, it's interesting that that happened at the same time that Cohen moved to have GameStop be able to buy other company shares. I bet that's where the rub came in, and what they chose was the wider company. But again, I don't know anything about that, so I can't do anything more than spec.
Yeah, same. I got a question from the audience here. Pippin wants to know what you think about Teddy.
I've got the first book. I went and bought the first book on Amazon. I try to like hide it in the background of any photo I'm taking, featuring power to the players. I think Teddy was definitely RC's original plan. You know, again, that was kind of talking about that umbrella. If my guess is, you know, obviously that's still on the table. And if anything, it's a fantastic trademark that, if anything, you know, will be very valuable. But I'm excited to see what his plans are with it, because, you know, he's the mad scientist of the corporate world, and always working hard to bring something of value to the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. Just to jump back to NFTs and whatnot, I think earlier you were talking about short films and I do think that there is a place for short films, nowadays, especially if you're, putting out content through NFTs. I think the other thing that was complicated for GameStop was uh you know, there was so much on there that was just after a little while you start to be like, okay, well, what is all of this? Like, is it just art? Do I just have it in my wallet because I like it, or does it do something? And I think there was some people that were on there that overpromised some gaming assets that never delivered. Um, I think that there was potential with that. Um, I I don't think that they had the right people on their team to actually be able to pull that off, even though they wound up making a ton of money. But again, it's like, okay, what happened? What's the plan? Is there any experience in these teams that know how to like scale from there? And it didn't seem like that was the case. Um, but in terms of filmmaking, it's really unique because so a part of the way through, utility started to become this buzzword. Okay, well,
Yeah.
I just bought this thing, what's the utility, right? What does it do? And for filmmaking, that, utility is like, that's how you can make things happen, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, from our experience, we've had some pretty great experience with utilizing NFTs as fundraising to kind of get something off the ground. It launched our docuseries. And then on the flip side of that, also, some of those you could have NFTs that are, become producer credits for people that are following along and they want to be more involved and they want to really help launch, Web3 filmmaking or the Web3 theater, is what Theta has. So
Hmm.
it is
And
it
and
is a
and
really
you think about like you think about how like film cells from classic movies are sort of like collectible items,
Mhm.
and you can totally do that with whether it's like individual frames of a film, or it's I think that's kind of my goal with Walkout, is to almost do like 10 sections of the film, and if you own all 10, then I'll send you a prop that was in the movie. Like I don't know yet, but you're right, that
Yeah.
utility has there's a really cool aspect of that where you're really reconnecting the producers and the viewers in a way that now in Hollywood there's so many middlemen. If you can afford to do it yourself and you can afford to distribute it yourself, you really should, because you don't want to get caught up in their mess, because
Right.
all it does is separate you from the viewer.
Yeah, and I think that, this is a really wonderful time that we're living in because those things are very possible. There was a creator that we have gotten to know pretty well in the film 3 world. His name is Miguel Faust, and he made this short film called Calladita, The Quiet Maid. And it's my understanding that he was, fundraising through, he had this short film that he sold stills of the movie to raise more money to actually tell the feature length version of that film.
Uh-huh.
Um, Wound up entering it into Decentralized Pictures. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. I highly
This
recommend them.
was Walkout was one of the the 8 finalists for the
Oh, no
first
kidding.
round.
Okay. Okay, cool. What was that? Was that which award was that?
Soderbergh round 1.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, then you know what I'm talking about. You're familiar with Miguel.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm familiar with Miguel, I'm familiar with DCP. My only gripe with DCP is they I had a number of competitions that I, submitted DCP coins to enter and really put together great pitches on, and the due date, or the cutoff date for entries, they kept pushing back until they received enough projects that they liked. And so even though, yeah, I made the finalists, I don't know if Calladita was in the original pool in that initial due date, and so it's kind of like I'm sitting here and walkouts in the top 3, and then we're in the top 5, and then we're in the top 8, and luckily they didn't extend it any further than that. And so anyway, I have a very not love hate, but just love irk relationship with DCP for that reason. But I'm
Yeah.
glad that, obviously Miguel is a lot more involved in Web3, and I don't hold it against him that he beat me. I just, have to work harder. And
Yeah. Well, and I think honestly, what I've come to know about DCP is that they are open to all sorts of learnings. I think that they've got a platform that they're literally like building the plane and flying the plane. And it's not because they're not prepared or they don't know what they're doing. It's because I think they really truly want the people to help build what this platform is. We were a part of the Sidewinder Award. We made it to the top 5. I think it's a split award for $200,000, which is a huge deal. But when you have that kind of money on the table, all sorts of, nastiness, I guess, shall we say, comes through. We got vote bombed.
Yep.
One guy, I think, bombed us 10 different times, 5 of those times being over the course of 24 hours. And if you know anything about DCP, this is more like for the people who are listening, as you're a user.
This is very niche Web3 filmmaking discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Super granular right now.
Again, nothing against DCP. I know they're going to be great.
Totally.
I will continue to enter. This is early days at DCP, and I'm sure that they would agree with us.
100%. Yeah. Yeah, but we're talking like this guy vote bombed us a ton, but he also, like, the last 5 times that he vote bombed us, he was staking more and more against that bomb, and he had a pretty high reputation. So if your reputation is high too, that adds more weight.
Yeah, if you were able to put a couple $100 into stakes through other accounts, it was pretty easy to knock your own project into the top 3 of a $200,000 prize. So it's kind of like if you were willing to gamble the $500 to $1,000, you could come away with 100 times that. Which kind of seems what people figured out.
From that experience, I suggested, I was like, what, I hate this whole vote bombing thing. One of the things that was posed was like, well, maybe we hide the leaderboard, right? So we don't know who's winning. And like, I like to see the leaderboard. I want to know where I'm at. I'm putting in
and it's
so
hard
much work.
It's like the whole point is transparency.
Yeah.
And then like with the final selection process for Kayadita, there were a lot of other groups, especially in round 1 and round 2 of the Soderbergh Award, where or maybe it wasn't the Soderbergh Award. Maybe it was the one that came right before. But there was one where there was something really sketchy that happened right at the end. And I don't know if this is over. I think it might have been the one that came before it that was like a $20,000 or $30,000 award, where it was sponsored by somebody else. And I came really, really close to sending an email to the sponsor of the award saying, I think something I think some insider or something happened here, and I don't remember why I held off on it. I think I didn't have like enough evidence going into it.
Yeah,
but it's like you want to be transparent. You want transparency until you think about, well, if we make it totally democratic, then you can. It's just whoever does the best job vote bombing and vote boosting, and it's not really about it is early days.
Yeah. So I suggested, I was like, you should turn off staking. If someone's going to leave a review that's not where you're not recommending that person, you should disable staking, because why would you stake against some, you know what I mean? It's like, it's set up for failure. So hopefully they take that note to heart and want to move forward with that, because I think that would be that would help this improve the situation, because it seems like towards the end, man, it starts to get real nasty, and it's just, and it's like, you're used to it, I'm used to it. As filmmakers, it's like that's the nature of the beast, and especially if there's money on the table, there's going to be people that are wanting to, knock you out of place. But yeah, that guy knocked us out of second place down to fourth. And then this other guy who's supposed to be like one of our peers in the film 3 space had an alt account and vote bombed us. And it was funny because towards the end, I think it was like honestly the last like 6 or 8 hours of the deadline. And we, us in the top 5, we were all like, as filmmakers, we were all talking to each other. And so I had posted in the Discord like the latest like vote bomb that we got. Like by this point, it was just funny to me. And somebody reached out to me and said, that's the guy that's number 4 currently, and here's the information. Here's his user. Here's the alt account. Here's his MySpace that he's using the name. And I was just like, holy shit! Like this is real, like
Yeah.
somebody that's supposed to be a peer, in the community, can't handle the healthy competition, I guess, so that got reported. The other thing is like, I'm not above calling people out, in that space, because
Yeah,
hey,
but I think
you want to be transparent and democratic about it. Let's go there.
what I ran into was, and kind of the sense that I got is, it looks better for the platform and for the sponsors of the awards if they don't have some kind of issue at the finish line.
Hmm.
And so I think it definitely, like, again, the fact they have not had a single one of these awards end with, oh, you know what, we might need to re-review these vote counts, or, it very much implies we would prefer to have a healthy sponsor pool that is happy with the end result than a happy, group of creators that feels the final tally is transparent. But again, I haven't been on DCP in a few months at this point. I'm
Yeah.
getting back on. I'm going to enter the Kodak. They just announced. I'm going to stick with it. I know it's not going to be perfect at the outset, and I'm not
Yeah.
giving up anytime soon. But I definitely we could talk a lot more about the implications of DCP than about the GameStop Marketplace closing
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, this last experience, despite the vote bombing and, whatever is to be expected, was a great experience. So I definitely I mean, I just entered their latest thing on there. And what was the other thing I wanted to say is that now it's also my understanding that they have this thing. I don't really know how it works, but they do take into account the vote bombs and stuff that come in. Like obviously, if for us, we got a 1.7 on technicals. It's like one of my cinematographers just won South by Southwest, so I'm pretty sure like the 1.7 on technicals like does not apply. So they sort of
Yeah.
do the math afterwards, I guess, so to speak, which is great. So they're not completely relying on this platform to just be like hard and fast. These are the results, and that's that. So that's kind of a relief, and hopefully that makes it so you want to jump back over at some point. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Really?
We could we could go on forever. Yeah, I guess, is there what else? What haven't I talked about that you feel like you want to discuss?
Good question. I'm, let's see. So I am at the tail end of Walkout. Walkout is a feature-length documentary that is going to be my next thing after Wedding March, of course, which debuts on Tuesday. So I'm knee deep in Wedding March for the next couple of days, still trying to kind of get some kind of press situation to balloon around that. But if anything, I think I do have some pretty exciting Wedding March film and TV adaptation avenues. Whether or not it actually gets made is anybody's guess, but I'd really love to get it, at least optioned that, with some independent producers, because I wrote it in mind. I basically wrote it in mind of the movies that these producers had made previously, and there are a number of like DC think tanks that sponsor movies about individuals that deal with government, and not so much right wing, and not so much Republican or Democrat, but more about there's this sort of cloud I would consider of this community. They just had a movie called Pinball debut last year, and it went on Hulu for a little while, and it's about how like pinball machines were illegal in New York City in the 60s and 70s. So it's like, okay, and then he went to the city hall and fought for the right to play pinball. So like that's not a politically charged story. That's a story that is about how activism connects with government, and the appropriate size of government, whether that's huge or small. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with Wedding March. Is after I get the book out and start to hear back on how people like it or don't like it, kind of looking at that film and TV adaptation. And then Walkout, I've been working on since actually before COVID. And once I finished Last Whistle in 2018, 2019, and that came out, and then COVID kind of made it impossible to, do a sports movie. That was when I decided, well, I'm just going to go gung ho into a documentary and just make it with all of the tools that I have. With anything in production, you can do it. You can do it quickly, you can do it well, or you can do it, cheaply. Pick two, and I definitely picked to do it well and cheaply. So it has not been a fast process. It's just been filming what I can, editing what I can, continuing to edit. Especially when you're not working with a lot of high quality material and technical materials. The story has to be excellent, and the editing has to be really good. And editing is kind of where I cut my teeth, 10, 15 years ago coming up. And so that's Walkout is about a friend of mine at USC who sent an email to like everybody in Walmart corporate. He was working in Walmart corporate at the time, and he was like protesting Walmart selling the ammunition that was used in the El Paso mass shooting that's now about 5 years ago. And so he ended up on, all the major news networks, and, he ended up, kind of making this movement. And then Walmart ended up taking like political action that, we hadn't seen in, a decade in the United States of, actually talking about the gun issue and trying to find the best path forward for gun legislation. And again, tackling that whole subject in a nonpartisan way was really my goal. So that's Walkout. I'm super excited. I love this poster. I always work very hard on marketing materials, especially after, I saw kind of how the key art process went on Last Whistle. I was like, oh, I think I can do better than this. And I was looking at the other posters of movies that were selling better than Last Whistle, and I was like, I want to match that. I know how to do this. So I was excited about Walkout.
Do you make them yourself? Do you make your marketing stuff, your posters and whatnot yourself, or?
The first one I always do. So with Power to the Players, I kind of got lucky with Power to the Players. This was the second draft from the publisher. Their first draft was pretty bad. I sent them an entire guide list of here's what I want to see, here's what I don't want to see, and they sent me like exactly what I didn't want to see, like Pac-Man, ghosts, and like just totally missing. So I said, no, do it again. But what's really dangerous, as what can be really dangerous with the middlemen and the distributors is they have some amount of ineptitude, and they have some amount of we don't care, we have to just put this out. Mm-hmm. And when those two things combine, you can end up with a really horrible poster, and you won't know until a day beforehand. And it's like, oh wait, I don't like this poster. I don't approve of this. This isn't. And it's like, well, if you can get us something different by tonight, great. But we have to get this out tomorrow, right? And that's my least favorite thing in any distribution middleman marketing situation is, their lack of care ends up being your problem. So that's where I really try to learn, self-teach to do most of this my own. So the Wedding March poster is designed by me, even though they messed up the book sleeve and says designed by somebody else. And the walkout poster, I came up with the concept, but I needed help with the 3D rendering, and I found somebody on Reddit that was nice enough to contribute a couple of hours of work towards helping me fulfill that vision. And that the walkout poster took 3 or 4 different designers, because that's a tough concept to tackle, sort of this idea of activism and guns and Walmart and everything else under the sun. And so that's why I'm really happy with kind of this look, that it's a bunch of ammo next to a toy plane and a bottle of shampoo. What's is that a sign of the times, or is that something that'll stick around?
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm looking at it over your shoulder. It's pretty spot on.
Kind of far away, yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, that stuff can be tough to nail, I think. There's a lot of times where I'm like, oh, like sometimes I know exactly what I want. And I tend to just try and do them myself as well. Like even if it's just like a screenplay or something, I just want to have it.
And throwing a concept poster on the first page of a screenplay, for anybody out there that's a writer, that's huge. Like you forget how little imagination a lot of the readers are in showbiz. And if you start with the picture, like they're gonna remember it, because there's like they're in movies because they like picture books more than books. It's like, that's why
you're handed this thing. It's like white paper, blocky text. There's zero visuals. So that's kind of that's how I feel about it too. Is like, I'm like, if I could start with a cover, at least it'll grab someone's attention. And that cover should like exactly convey, or at the very least pull them in to the first 10 pages of what you've got. So yeah. Well, I'm along for the ride. I would love to see you, making stuff over in the Film 3 world, the Web3, theater space.
I would love to.
I think you'd find some really cool support over there. At the very least, the people that are hungry for content are, they're there for it. They're like, they're wanting to support the Theta Network and this Web3 theater, and the growth of that company. So people are hungry for the content for sure. So I guess that said, can you just drop your socials? I'll link them in the comments below too. But if you want to share some of those, some of that.
Yeah. Absolutely. You want me to drop it on the chat right here? Or email you.
Why don't you just tell me what it is here, and then we'll make sure that it's written down below too.
Let's see. So basically the best place to find the 2 books are on Amazon. And obviously there are a lot of people I know that don't love Amazon and don't love supporting Bezos and the billionaires, and that's fair. You can get them directly from the publisher, but my approach to Amazon is their algorithm can do wonders for a book or a movie if it gets sold really well, in a way that the money that they make from it and that Bezos receives from it does not, you can offset that with the amount of free marketing you get from their algorithm. So that's kind of the moral gray area that I look at when it comes to no, apes can't support rainforests, and it's like that's fair, but if you wanted to, here's the pros and cons. And then I'm everywhere as I used to be the Mad Smatter, but I had so many people on Reddit doing like the Wicked Smat thing. I was like, okay, I gotta go Wicked Smat. That's way better than the Mad Smatter. So Wicked Smat everywhere else. And website obviously is smatfilms.com. And that's where I'll, post the latest when it comes to the books and the movies and anything else. So excited to find a Web3 home for Walkout, and glad to have met you all.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you have our support. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, about having your books and whatnot on Amazon, like for the people
Yeah.
that are reading, reviews are incredibly important, like,
Yes.
so just taking that time to follow up with a review on your book. I mean, it's necessary, and that's how that's how more and more people discover it. So I will
Yeah,
definitely
and
hop on
it's
there and
thank
do
you,
that.
thank you. It's not something I can directly ask for in Super Stomp because I do have to be really careful about self promotion, and so I love lurking comments whenever other people will post about the book in a way that's not self promotive, and then I love again in my post this week that hit the top of the page talking about the Norwegian researchers. It was like, yeah, it was about my book, but I'm not going to link it. If you want to ask me about it, I'll tell you about it. But really trying not to step on. But again, the mods at Super Stomp, from my opinion at least, lately they've been super super cool. No runic glory going on anymore. So I actually have really appreciated them kind of letting me exist in that gray area of like, okay, come on, this is literally a book for Super Stock. I make like 50 cents per book sold. So like, please, can we
Yeah.
please, and again, if I end up making anything off the book, I'll DRS it. So it's like, let's just, let's just make sure that the book gets in people's hands because, I slaved away to get this to them.
Yeah, that's super cool. I guess thank you so much for doing the work.
Yeah,
We need people like
we all
you.
do the work.
Yeah. So that's great. And like I said, we're happy to support you over at Theta, and I'd love to see you over there. So that'd be super cool. Um
Absolutely.
and aside from that, thank you to everyone tuning in. That we've had a great steady crowd over on Twitter listening in, and YouTube. Both of these spots are kind of like evergreen content, so it's great. It grows and grows. And then shout out to Pharcyde TV and Booty Brown, who has provided this platform for us. It's been really awesome because there's a ton of followers over here on his YouTube page. And what we're doing is kind of outside of the box a little bit. It's not all, sometimes we have like hip hop conversations, I'll interview musicians, but for the most part, he's like, you should talk about Film 3, you should talk about blockchain stuff, you should talk about GameStop, so it's really nice of him to allow us to have this sort of unique access to an audience that might not know anything about what we're talking about. So that's really cool. And just for the people listening, what's that? Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. A shout out to the Get Hype crew for tuning in. Duck Set, Moon Queen, Lava Heads. I see you, Derek. Yeah, and just for everyone tuning in and following along, it's massively helpful. A lot like your book reviews, it helps the algorithm when people show up and like and subscribe and do all the things, right? So yeah, so with that said, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and I really look forward to what you have coming up next. It's going to be fun to follow along.
Absolutely. It's fun to have all these projects that, I started years ago, finally making it out into the marketplace. And it's great to be releasing content again, because if you don't do that for too long, it can hurt. So always keep
Totally.
creating.
Totally. I love hearing that from you. That's a great sentiment to close out with. So with that, we'll see everybody next Thursday, 3 p.m. on 3 p.m. PST on Pharcyde TV.